People don't come. We're all on the post.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Human Services Committee. June 23rd, 2025 meeting. We have one department with us today, Warren County Department of Social Services. I called the meeting to order, I think at 10:27. I'd like to get a motion for approval of minutes from the prior committee meeting. Supervisor Strainer and Supervisor Turner on the second. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have privilege of the floor. Any public comment period from any of the other supervisors or guests in the room? Hearing nothing, we'll move on to the action agenda items. We have one request. If you could walk us through that, please, Nina, and good morning.
Good morning, everyone. So requesting to enter into a long-term lease agreement with the White House, that's who we awarded the RFP to run the homeless family shelter at building number 11 on Gurney Lane, which is a county-owned property.
Motion to bring that to the floor, please. Supervisor Runyon and Supervisor Turner on the second. Questions or comments for the commissioner? Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I was just curious, are there any kind of financial benefits for us doing this?
The financial benefit would be that the goal is to have families in, well, one, reduce motel placements for these families that we're putting in temporary housing and have shorter lengths of stay in temporary housing. So we don't, at this point, we're not paying anything to White House. We would use them as a provider and pay per night. Very similar to what we use for other housing providers, but the goal would be that we would be able to get them into permanent housing faster.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a quick.
go ahead.
Have we done any work on this building? I mean, is this?
Not yet. So part of this agreement will be, the first step is to work with the White House to complete a building assessment. So White House will go in, we'll review the building, figure out what we need to do, develop plans. We'll work with Kevin Hajos in the Department of Public Works regarding the building, and then we'll prepare to submit a grant to the state, which was the HHAP.
Well, I kind of get nervous when I don't have any numbers here. So they're just gonna do this on their own. I mean, we have to pay them some kind of money at some point in time, don't we?
That would be when we're paying for the services.
Okay, but a 30-year lease, that seems a little long.
Right, so the purpose of the 30-year lease is part of the Homeless Housing Assistance Program grant application. The White House has to have site security in order to apply for the grant. So when they develop their building assessment of applying for the grant for X amount of dollars of whatever construction to rehab the building to bring it up to code and OTDA regulations to operate the shelter, once that phase is put in, which I'll give updates of that along the way through committee, but then we would submit the grant, and then White House will complete all of that assessment, submit the grant, and then from there, if they're awarded the grant, then we would begin the next step.
Okay, oh,
Well, go ahead, Dave.
well, okay, so let me get this straight now. White House would be responsible for any of the individuals we put in there. So you would have to have no oversight of how they do things. And what happens if we have any, like a damage of some sort? Will they take care of that?
So let me just clarify a little bit. The Department of Social Services is required to oversee shelter operations in our county. So that all goes to the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance through their certification process. So we would have oversight there. However, they're operating the program. We would have to approve all of their policies and plans in terms of how they operate that shelter.
Okay, so the other part of my question here is, So there's no competitive offers from any other facility or other groups that would do this, and then they're probably the only ones.
We submitted the RFP and the White House was the only one that responded.
I'm good.
They're a great community partner.
Oh, no,
No doubts that.
no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just wondering if through the process, especially what you've already said, we did the RFP, so then, you know, as far as I'm concerned, we're at the goal we needed to be at, so.
Right. And the idea is if we don't get the funding through the grant, this would stop.
At the completion of our meeting on Friday, I had the opportunity to meet Nina and Jason McLaughlin, the executive director of the White House, at the building. I hadn't been there for 25 years, I think. If it's okay with the commissioner, if maybe we could set up a couple of site visits for interested supervisors during the next month, that might be helpful.
Sure.
Chairman?
Yes.
And just to clarify procedurally, the board on Friday approved for publication a local law that amends the county law to allow the county to enter into a lease longer than 5 years. That's going before the board for a public hearing and potentially a vote at the next meeting. So if that local law passes, that gives the board the authority to then act on this proposed lease agreement. So there's multiple pieces happening. There's multiple pieces in this entire transaction. This lease resolution request is one of a couple of pieces that are in motion to make this happen. But this lease agreement will not go forward unless and until the board approves the local law following the public hearing at our next board meeting.
Okay, I have another. The money that we are now paying to the motels, will that be going to the White House to pay for this service? Is it gonna be the same cost?
I can't tell you the exact cost right now.
Okay, and so my other question is, it's a 30-year lease. If we come to a point where there's an issue, do we have an out?
Can I answer that?
Sure, go ahead, please.
There's multiple contractual agreements that the county will be entering into with White House. One relates to the bid that has already been approved by the Board of Supervisors to do the work, some of the work under phase 1 and phase 2 of that, which is really the submitting of this grant by White House to the state of New York. A second is going to be an operational agreement. The operational agreement is going to be the meat and potatoes of what the Department of Social Services and the state of New York require for this this shelter, family shelter, to continue in operation. In my mind, the concept would be that a violation of the operational contract would result in a termination of the lease agreement. So there's multiple documents in this transaction to make this happen. The lease, the term of the lease that would deal with breach would most likely be related to that operation agreement and failing to meet the terms and conditions required to continue as a New York State shelter. And I would defer to the commissioner as she's more familiar and comfortable with New York State requirements than I am.
Okay, well, it brings up another question. So what if we had to discontinue the lease? Who would be the people picking up the part that the White House is doing? So that's something you gotta look for down the road, or
Yeah, whether it would continue,
It-
that would be
it doesn't sound like there's a lot of people out there that do this service.
well, there's certainly, my impression is there's not a lot of agencies willing to write a state grant to obtain the funding from the state of New York, to work as the overseer for construction management purposes for renovation of a building, to hire staff, to train staff, to get certified by the state of New York, to become a family homeless shelter. And then after doing all of those initial steps to actually run the operation. Future change, should that ever occur, wouldn't require all those first steps it would be finding the right party to continue operations of an existing shelter. And I cannot comment on what that looks like from the state of New York, but I would suspect the state of New York would be a tremendous partner in assisting and aiding the county. I don't want to say the county, but assisting another agency to come in to help the state continue to run a certified family shelter at that location.
Well, I have no problem with the White House. I think they do great work, so I'm not worried about that, but, you know, just like to make sure all our i's are dotted and our t's are crossed and we don't run into issues for previous boards, so. Thank
Just a couple of quick comments. As I understand it, we're one of the smaller areas, to receive this. Normally, these grants are made available to much more urban areas, of the state and probably even, the country. So kudos to us to having the foresight. I think the important word also is family. It's always challenging, especially during certain seasons, to place homeless individuals. Much more families, especially if there's children involved. So I think in the long run, it's going to be a benefit both socially and also economically to to engage in the partnership with the White House. Yeah.
Nina, this is primarily for people with children though, right? The whole goal is to keep the children out of the hotel and into a home-like setting,
That's correct.
right? So like a husband and wife couldn't do it.
It
They'd
wouldn't
have
be
to have children.
Single adults, it would
Right.
have to be for families.
That's what I thought. Okay, yeah, that's important. It's good.
No, I.
Okay.
Sorry.
Anyone else?
Stop it.
We've got a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? All in favor of request number one, say aye. Any opposed? So moved. Any other discussion items, Nina? Well, we have do we have a finance report? I know we do have some good information loaded. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, this is your revenue and expenditure report through May of 2025. Expenses, we've used up about 36% of our budget, so not too bad. We're doing pretty well there. Revenues, we've only received 32% of the projected revenue year to date. May was a little bit light, but I can tell you that it's coming in June. I think some of that had to do with the hold up with the state budget and everything kind of slowed down. So we're in a good place there, I think. And then overtime, the overtime report, we're up about 5% over last year, but we have brought on a lot of new police workers and they are doing a lot of training. So that's part of it. It's a big part of it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jill. Does anyone have any questions for our finance director? Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to give kudos to our social services office because last Friday there was a county administrator meeting in New York. And a big topic of discussion were over expenditures in the departments of social services, some running into the millions. Our folks have been doing really well with budgeting. I think we deserve kudos for that.
Congratulations.
Try.
Anyone else? No other discussion items. For referrals pending, again, privilege of the floor, any public comment period on any social services related questions or comments? Hearing none, I will request a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Strainer and Supervisor Runyon on this.